And welcome in to another edition of the Mainly Hoops podcast. Another best bets episode here today. We're going to be talking about the Saturday slate, where we're going to have some great games again. We got like Houston, Iowa State, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, which is one of my favorite games every year, and Duke, Illinois. A little out of conference battle in the middle of conference season is pretty interesting, but it'll be a good, like, refreshing game to watch. Just because we're in the heat of conference season, it'll be just a fun game to watch overall against with two really interesting and talented teams. So definitely excited for that game. And there's plenty of other great games on the slate as well. And sadly, we only have a few more Saturday slates left, but that just means March Madness is a little bit closer, and definitely super excited for that time of year. And always that first Thursday or even Selection Sunday is one of my favorite days of the year. And that first Thursday of the first round is always the most exciting day of the year for me, and kind of just feels like Christmas. So definitely excited for that, and obviously not wishing away the conference season, but definitely inching closer to that. A lot of bracket talk, a lot of bubble watch going on right now, and it's definitely been interesting to watch. But as for our progress betting wise, we're up 36 units on the season after a pretty good run as of late. We're up close to 10 units over the last week. So we're in a pretty good spot as of now, kind of peaking at the right time. Hopefully we can carry this into conference tournament season and into March Madness, where I know a lot of people will have their attention to, especially from a betting perspective. It's one of the most popular betting events of the entire year. So hopefully we can lead you in the right direction there. And to follow our progress, you can follow us on the Action Network app, and our account name is Mainly Hoops One. And make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, where you can find all of our picks every single day. We'll post them on Twitter. We'll have articles on our website as well at mainlyhoops.com, and in our Discord channel as well, where you can find that channel through our bios and on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find a lot of late ads to our cards there. We'll post our most of our card onto Twitter every single day, but to find like our late ads where like I'll be waiting on injuries or anything, or just find like a late matchup angle that I really like, and I'll add it to the Discord channel late, and those won't end up getting posted on Twitter. So the only place you can find that is in the Discord channel. And our player props, you'll find most of them on Twitter, but you'll find a lot of late ads into the Discord channel. We've had a lot of people join recently, and there's some good conversation in there. A lot of people asking just about leans for certain games that maybe I have an opinion on, maybe I don't, but definitely get into the Discord channel and feel free to ask about any game on the board, really. Maybe not dipping down all the way to the low major slates, as it's a little bit tough to dissect these games from all angles, especially from player prop angles. They don't offer for low major games, but trying to dissect all of that, player props and the game in general. I mostly stick to power conference. We'll dive into some of the higher up mid majors, but for the most part, I'll have an opinion on most games that are asked in the Discord channel, and believe that is it. And we'll get into the actual slate now on Saturday. And one of my favorite bets of the day is Alabama laying 9.5 at home against Kentucky. And injuries are a big part of this. And obviously Alabama's coming off of two losses, but the injuries to Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson are massive in this game. They don't have the same kind of creation or shot making without those two guys. They're kind of being replaced by Travis Perry, who at this time is not really a point guard. He will be more like later in his career, but he's not really a point guard right now. He's more of a catch and shoot guy at this point. Not a ton of creation in his game at the moment. And Trent Noah's looked pretty good. He's exceeded my expectations, but he's certainly not Jackson Robinson, and definitely the replacement value for it definitely dips a little bit when those guys are out. So in in this situation, they're without their shot making, their top tier shot making, they're kind of playing with their hands tied, really, and because that's their best quality, obviously. So, and against an Alabama team that forces you to make shots off the dribble, I think that kind of spells some. It's a tough situation for them overall, and Bama, they should dominate the rim in this game, just like they did last game at Rupp, and they got to the free throw line a ton as well. So yeah, I got the Kentucky defense has really struggled throughout the season and especially in league play. I think Alabama can expose that in a fast-paced game. So I think there's plenty of opportunities in this contest to break away. It's a total of like 177 and a half, I believe, which obviously I won't be touching the total, especially with a total that high. The shot making is going to have to be ridiculous for it to get over, or for if there's not any sort of shot making, it's definitely going to go under. But yeah, I definitely like Alabama in this game off of two losses and their ability to score at the rim, and they definitely have the better shot making in this game, and they also have the better defense. I think they're better in all facets. Plus, the fast paced scenario in this contest leads me to back Alabama. Not super concerned about the number. If it gets ballooned to 11 and a half, I would probably pass, but it's at 9.5 right now. It opened at 8, which was very surprising. Like Butler and Robinson haven't been ruled out officially, but the fact that they're not fully practicing and they're kind of just they haven't been. I believe Butler's going through 5-on-5s, but it's more of like a modified setting, and he's not like full go yet. I would assume that those guys aren't going to play with like just not enough. I mean, they're sitting on the 3 seed line right now, and they don't really have much of a reason to come back extremely quick. So I would assume those guys sit. And Robinson was in a wrist brace last game, so I would assume those guys don't go. If it's just one of the two, I'll still bet this regardless, and I've already placed some of my wager. I placed a half unit on it already. Once those guys are confirmed, I'll end up placing the whole thing. So yeah, definitely Alabama is one of my favorite bets of the day. And moving on to the next one, another SEC game, probably the grossest bet I'll make all day, and one of the grosser ones I'll make all season. It's the 0-13 South Carolina Gamecocks getting 3.5 at home against Texas. This one, it's a little bit scary backing them as a short dog here at home, but South Carolina's been extremely unlucky in close games this year, especially in league play. In games decided by 5 or fewer in league play, they're 0-6. Like, and some of these losses have come against really good teams, including Auburn. Auburn, they only lost by 1. I believe it was like a 69. Actually, I believe it was 69-66 game. Lost to Florida by 1. For the game they had Florida on the ropes, they were winning that entire game. Ole Miss as well. They lost to them by 4, I believe, and it was a super tight game, and they had the lead for a while in that game also. Then they lost to Mississippi State in overtime. So definitely some unfortunate results for them, and they easily could have won any of those games. I wouldn't have been surprised if they ended up winning 3 of those games. It's just late game luck didn't go their way, and they create their own luck at times, though, with their lack of guard play, and they turn the ball over quite a bit. So, but either way, going 0-6 in games decided by 5 or fewer is unlucky for the most part. And teams are also shooting 40% against South Carolina over their last 5 games, and they're not a fantastic 3-point defense by any means, but they don't allow many attempts from 3, and their scheme will guard the 3-point line pretty well. They play a lot of drop coverage, and they try to stay connected on the perimeter. So I would say that they're pretty unlucky in this regard, especially over their last 5. And I do believe the rebound battle will favor South Carolina here. They're better on both ends of the floor throughout the course of the year. I believe they're top 150 in rebounding on both ends of the floor, including on the defensive end. They're top 75. And against a Texas team that's really weak on the glass, having an advantage in this game, especially at home, I think is pretty significant in this game. And like I said, turnovers for South Carolina are an issue. They're 302nd nationally in turnover rate, but Texas is a more conservative defense. They play a lot of drop with Shedrick, and they don't really have a lot of ball hawks on the perimeter, like with Trey Johnson and Jordan Pope getting a lot of time in the guard spots. That's just not, they don't really harass you all that much. So I don't think the South Carolina guards are in that poor of a spot here from a ball handling situation. And Texas is 12th in turnover rate defensively in league play. So I mean, South Carolina could throw the ball away a decent amount here. They've done that against teams that don't turn you over a ton, but I'm definitely more optimistic about this guard group when they're playing a defense that's more conservative. And South Carolina is the bigger team in this matchup. Like I said, the rebound edges with them in this game, but they can also work through their post-up game with Colin Murray-Boyles and Nick Pringle. I'm not really sure who's going to guard Colin Murray-Boyles in this game, especially if Arthur Kaluma isn't able to go, I feel like he would be the ideal matchup for Murray Boyles. But if he can't go, they're gonna have to use maybe Jason Kent, and then there's some other guys on the bench like Pryor possibly, but there's a lot of smaller options for him, and can't really put Shedrick on him because he's gonna have to contain Pringle, and so I do think there's actually paths to offense against a Texas defense that I think could be a bit overvalued at this point. And obviously, against the drop coverage of South Carolina on the defensive end, I worry a little bit about the Texas shot making with Trey Johnson. They're not going to be able to play as much drop as they want to. They're going to have to, play out the level and pick and roll and probably blitz him a little bit and force the ball out of his hands. But I don't really think there's a ton of other options on this Texas offense that I'm that afraid of, especially when they have to go on the road. And they're all this Texas team is all relying on shot making. They take care of the ball okay, but like I said, they don't get on the glass at all. And on the road, if you're not making shots and you don't have another place to go, then it definitely creates a pretty poor situation for them. And I actually think South Carolina picks up their first conference win to get to 1-13 against a Texas team that I'm not all that inspired by. I was on them last Saturday against Kentucky. They were down the entire game, probably shouldn't have won or covered that game. So, and it just wasn't a great effort outside the last 5 minutes where Kentucky basically gave them the game. So I felt a bit fortunate coming out of that last Saturday. But I think on the road, I think South Carolina's going to be super motivated to pick up their first win, which they probably have been for a while. But this seems like a pretty good spot for them where they have advantages in the shot volume battle. So I'll back South Carolina down to 3 or even 2.5. I'll back them down to 2.5. I believe you can get some 3.5 right now. So that's the spot I would go to in another SEC battle. And then another game, it's a bit of a high spread, but I like Louisville -15 at home against Florida State. Louisville just profiles extremely well as a big favorite. They win the shot volume battle. They like to get up and down, and when they're playing inferior competition, I think they have a lot of advantages. And they can shoot the ball against this Florida State defense that will give up a lot of 3-point opportunities, a lot of spot up opportunities. Like guys like Rain Smith, Terrence Edwards, and Javon Hadley, I think can have a lot of success. And now that Louisville's fully healthy, I think they're in a pretty good spot. And I especially like that they take care of the ball at a pretty high level against an FSU defense that they basically live off forcing turnovers. And these teams played early in conference season. I believe it was one of the first matchups of conference season. Louisville only turned it over 6 times. When you're only turning it over 6 times against Florida State, who's a hyper aggressive defense that likes to press basically all game. And Louisville's a great press offense. They were able to generate 90 points in that game. So definitely like the matchup for their offense. And I like the fact that Louisville can win the rebound battle on both ends. They're top 100 in offensive and defensive rebound rate. So definitely an advantage there against an FSU team that they look to get on the offensive glass a little bit, but if Louisville can slow them down, I think that really takes away from FSU's offensive attack. And like I said, Louisville's spacing in this game is going to be massive if they're able to take care of the ball, hit some skip past threes. And I expect Rain Smith to have a pretty big day, possibly a player prop coming in that area, but definitely like Louisville here overall. I would lay, actually, I believe we can get 13.5 right now, but I would play this up to 15.5. So don't typically love playing these high spreads in conference play, but in a fast-paced game, this is kind of a similar situation to the Alabama game where high total, fast-paced, a ton of possessions, the number is less likely to come into play, especially if Louisville is able to knock down some shots. They've been making a lot more shots in conference play, and I think they were due to kind of start making some shots after they didn't make anything in non-con. And I do like that they can kind of dominate the shot volume battle in a game that's going to have a ton of possessions, probably close to 70 to 72 possessions in this game. So yeah, I like Louisville laying a big number. And the last official play will be Princeton against Dartmouth. There's no official line out for this game because Princeton actually hasn't played their game against Harvard yet at the time of recording here on Friday night. But the projected line on Torvik is Princeton -3. I don't think we get 3 because I think the market's a little bit higher on Princeton, but I would lay this up to 5. And even at 5, I still think this is a pretty good buy low, sell high spot in an Ivy League matchup. And Dartmouth, we'll start with Dartmouth. They've been playing well over their heads lately, especially in the shooting category. Teams are shooting just 28% against them in league play, and they're not a particularly great 3-point defense by any means. So, and against a Princeton team that has, Xavier Lee and Caden Pierce that can knock down shots against pretty much anybody, I think they're probably due for some regression there. And I believe in their last 3 games, teams are only shooting 19% against them. So I think they're due for some major regression. Maybe that comes tonight against Penn, but if not, and regardless, I'll probably be on Princeton anyway. And Dartmouth also can't expose Princeton on the interior, which Princeton's defense on the interior is pretty weak, and they're a pretty small team, but Dartmouth is fairly similar in size, and they're only 262nd nationally in 2-point field goal percentage. So if they're not able to expose Princeton on the interior, I think that's definitely advantage Princeton in this matchup. And the pace battle, I think, favors Princeton at home. Dartmouth loves to run in transition. They're 39th in adjusted tempo. And it's a Princeton team that ranks outside the top 250 in pace per Torvik. I do think they can limit transition opportunities. I will always favor the slower team. It's easier to slow down a fast-paced team than it is to speed up a slow-paced team. So definitely advantage Princeton in that area. And like I said, I think that the 2 biggest categories in this game are the shot making ability of Princeton to take down this overvalued Dartmouth defense, and the fact that they're going to be able to play at their pace, and they have a great half court offense. And like I said, the defense has been the issue all year against a Dartmouth team that they can shoot their way to a win in this game. They shoot a ton of threes, and Princeton does a pretty good job of guarding them. They've been a tad unfortunate, and they're not the most elite 3-point defense out there, but this is mostly a buy low, sell high spot with a few schematical advantages in favor of Princeton. And like I said, I'd play this up to -5. Probably wouldn't play it much higher than that because Princeton really hasn't been a great favorite of more than a couple possessions this year, and that worries me a little bit in a game that they're going to try to control pace. I prefer to get Princeton as a dog, but this is definitely one of the bigger buy low, sell high spots on the board. And that's it for the actual official plays. I have a couple leans for tomorrow in a couple of bigger games, and the first one is Texas A&M. I believe they're laying 1 right now against Tennessee. Was hoping to be able to give this out at the opener. It opened 2.5 for plus 2.5 for Texas A&M. I like how their defense sets up against Tennessee, who they can't really beat you over the top. And the only guy on the Tennessee team that can beat you over the top is Chaz Lanier, and all the other guys on this roster, like Sakai Ziegler, Jordan Gainey on the perimeter. I'm not really scared of their shooting ability against a Texas A&M defense that's a complete rim denial defense. And I like the fact that Texas A&M can get on the glass on the offensive end against a Tennessee team that really doesn't have any other holes besides their defensive rebound ability. Teams like Florida and Auburn have gotten all over the glass against them, and A&M is the best offensive rebounding team in the country. So I do think that's the one way to generate offense against this Tennessee team, and A&M has it. And they don't really need to make a ton of threes or a ton of jump shots to have any success on the offensive end. So I think that's advantage A&M. Not sure if it's going to be an official play. If it is, it's going to be played smaller because I didn't really like them laying points in this game. I was looking for the 2.5, got that at the opener, but wasn't able to give that out in time or record the podcast in time to give that out. So definitely a lean. And if you end up taking it, I would definitely be on that side for sure. And maybe waiting to get it live if Tennessee hits a couple jumpers to start the game. I don't expect them to rein them in from 3 for all 40 minutes. So getting them live at a plus number isn't the worst idea, but yeah, definitely lean A&M for sure. And then a couple other spots. I like Gonzaga laying 4.5 against St. Mary's in a revenge spot. They didn't make any shots in the first game, and I do think they have some advantages on the offensive end. They won the battle on the interior actually from a shot making perspective. They shot 21 of 37 inside the arc. Against St. Mary's, they only shot 12 of 30 inside the arc, but it was just their run at the beginning of the game where they made 6 of their first 8 threes, I believe, and they made a couple banked threes to give them a decent cushion. And they were up, I believe they're up double digits at one point, but Gonzaga was able to get back in the game and actually looked like the better team for the last 28 to 30 minutes of that game. So I definitely like Gonzaga to bounce back here, and they need a marquee win. They're sitting on like the 9 seed line in bracketology projections right now. So this is a big time game for them against the St. Mary's team that's comfortably in the tournament. But the way I'm actually going to play this is looking to get a live spot. I just don't like fading St. Mary's when they're over a possession dog. So waiting to get them live at like a pick, maybe even like a short favorite. It's just St. Mary's is so fundamentally sound, and they can do a great job on the glass. They can play even or even beat Gonzaga on the glass. So I would wait, possibly get a pick early in the game. Probably wouldn't be betting anything live in the second half just because I like St. Mary's late game execution if it's close down the stretch. But definitely wouldn't fault you if you bet Gonzaga laying the 4.5 here. And then one other live spot I'm actually looking at, and I may actually lay this number pregame, is Utah State laying 4.5 against San Diego State. It's mostly just because I do not like San Diego State's zone offense at all. They're 24th percentile per synergy points per possession against zone. Utah State plays all zone, and so Utah State defense has actually been regressing a bit, but if they're playing a team that's not going to really expose them on the defensive end, I think they're in a really good spot because they clearly have the better offense in this game. And Utah State was one of the only teams so far that was able to generate any sort of efficiency on the interior against San Diego State. They shot 14 of 22 inside the arc against San Diego State on the road in a win. I believe that game went to overtime and Utah State was able to win it. But I just don't like San Diego State's shot makers against this zone defense. But I wouldn't fault you to lay the 4.5 to start the game, but I would rather get this game live if San Diego State if they make a few shots early in the game. I'm not going to be too picky on the number. If I can get inside a possession, that's probably what I'll take. And if it gets bet down before the game, if some sharp action comes in on the Aztecs, I'll probably be laying a short number with Utah State. And that's going to be all for the picks today. 4 official picks and maybe a few late ads. We'll see. But we're going to have a bunch of player props, have a few that I like for tomorrow on the surface, and haven't dove into the entire slate yet, but usually come out with 5 to 6 player props on a Saturday. So definitely excited for that, and always excited for the big Saturday cards, and being able to have a ton of action and hopefully find some winners for you guys. But yeah, make sure again to join the Discord channel and follow us on the Action Network app to track our progress, and follow our Twitter and Instagram. That's at Mainly Hoops. And yeah, I believe that's all I have. And good luck on your wagers, and we'll see you next time.